Nvidia 80 and 90 model GPUs. Let's take a deep dive. Okay, welcome back to the channel. Let's get right into this dual class review, the 80 and 90 class comparison. This is the sort of the summary of the deep dive into productivity between these two classes of cards. Okay, and this is going to focus on one test bench. So we're going to use the Intel bench. We're going to put all the cards, the 80 and 90 class cards, in here from the 1080 Ti all the way down to the 5090. So of these class of cards tested, I've put all the specs up here on the screen. The top of the tables are directly from Nvidia's website. The bottom is the Tech Power Up data. I'm trying to talk fast to get to the data. If you've been following along, this is old hat. You know how I set these up. So we're trying to get right to the data. The synthetic benchmarks, I have a set that I like to run on my GPUs is what I'm developing my database of information in terms of speed and performance. But some of them I had to throw out for this because the 1080 Ti doesn't support it, or the 50 series card doesn't support it. And so with that, you know that you're getting the same tests run on all cards within the same system, and we'll be able to look at this data and make it relatable. So we're going to get a mean from synthetic and productivity benchmarks, and also using render time with Puget Bench 1.2.0, Davinci Resolve Studio, using an H.264 codec and an MOV container. So same settings, generate our mean, compare the scores. So the synthetic benchmarks, because it's such a busy table, I needed to split this up into two slides. So you can pause this and go back and forth if you like, but I didn't want to omit the raw data and just leave you with percentages. That wouldn't have been fun. So, this is the data that I collected. And I know that we're seeing differences here in the 2080. There's some negatives on the screen, and this has been reviewed previously from 1080 to a 2080 to a 3080. You're seeing a drop in performance to go from a 1080 Ti to a 2080 for synthetic benchmarks, but then you pick back up in the 30 series. So you end up with a 30% increase. 3090, you only picked up a 6.6 increase. Now, this isn't the 3080 Founders. I have a 3080 Founders. I'm going to rerun the testing with it and see how much different it really is, just from my own personal understanding, because I know that there is more VRAM on the 3080 12 gig. It's 12 instead of 10. But there's also some clock improvements as well. So it's a little faster card, and because of that, you're seeing not a huge in performance improvement from the 3080 12 to the 3090. To go to a 4080, you get a 21% improvement from the 3090 to the 4080. And then that's a 49% total generational uplift from the 1080 Ti. That's how you'll read these slides. And so then from the 4080 to the 5080, we see an 8.3% generational uplift. Yeah, the 4080, then the 5080. The 5080 with your synthetic benchmarks, as it's been talked about with lots of other content creators, is that it didn't beat the 90 series flagship from the previous generation. So we should have had the 4080, 4090 here, 5080, 5090 here with a normal progression. We don't see that. We have 4080, 5080, 4090, 5090, and as the way the scores break out from a synthetic benchmark. Now, that's not always going to be the case. I think this is really interesting information. But you end up with a total of almost 65% generational uplift from the 1080 Ti to the 5090. So there's been a lot of horsepower through the years being pumped into these cards. These are great performing cards. Every one on these screens is still a relevant, capable card. It's just, where do you want to spend your money, and what do you want to do with these cards? Let's look at more productivity based with Puget Bench 1.2.0 benchmark. And again, the details of each GPU that I used here in the second column. And we're focusing on the standard score. That is the Davinci Resolve Studio score. So if you have the paid version to maximize the benefits within the software and the GPU you're using, you can see a usual generational uplift as you flow through the standard score. Now, keep in mind, we just talked about the 5080 didn't beat the 4090 in terms of performance, but that was from the synthetic benchmark, and we saw that in gaming. But we don't necessarily see that when you're looking at productivity and things like Puget Bench and using this type of software. We see the usual uptick that we would expect to see. Now, albeit it's only a 4.1% increase, but hey, we'll take it, right? It's actually following suit with what we wanted to see from the first place. The 80 series, the newer 80 series card, beating the previous generation's 90 flagship card. And we do see that here with the scores: 4080 Super, 4090, 5080, 5090, and the generational uplift that you get. Now, how about rendering times? Did we follow suit with our rendering times? And it turns out that we actually did. So these numbers were presented previously, but it was really interesting to put these 80 and 90 series cards class cards together and look to see how they stacked up. And what we're seeing now is we have 4080, 4090 at 345, 337, then 5080, 5090. So just as we would want them to stack up, and the maximum FPS that I did see when you're rendering on a quick export was it follows generationally. It really looks like it makes sense from a gaming FPS and synthetic benchmark. It doesn't make sense, but from a productivity benchmark, the world is a wonderful place again. It seems to all make sense, albeit differences in time here. Like you did see a drop of 32 seconds to get a 5080 over a 4090. Now there are onboard encoders here. The 50 series has a little bit more grunt in terms of for productivity and content creation. I really like the 50 series for that reason. And I think the 5070 Ti is just as good, in my opinion, as the 5080. So you've got some decisions to make. If you're questioning this, I've got plenty of other videos out there for this 50 series video in terms of how well does a 5070, 5080, and the like work. That data is there, but I really think that this is interesting. It's starting to follow suit again. So let's sum it all up. Now, instead of breaking this up into 2 slides, I was able to jam the 2 slides on 1 slide. Okay, so starting with 1080 here at the top and looking at your scores. So 1080, 2080. Now, I organized it by the average generational difference score. So the generational score, you got 7155 for the 1080 Ti. The next was 2080, then 3080 12 gig, 3090, 4080 at 12,700, and then 5080. Now we've flip-flopped again and followed suit with our synthetic scores. The productivity scores wasn't enough to keep them in order. So it's 4080, 5080, 4090, 5090 in terms of a total mean score for assessment. And I guess that's just because it was so lopsided in your synthetic benchmark scores. The productivity scores weren't robust enough to maintain that generational separation that we were expecting to see. So in terms of your productivity uplift, well, that's not a correct number. So now I got to go back and check that one out because that's not the difference that you should see. So let me go back and fix that. But from 14,100 to 14,700 to 17,000, there's no negative numbers there. So I need to fix my percentages. But the other part that I want to make here is that our prices. Like, look at the release dates of these things and our prices. Again, I just was talking about on my previous video, the 4090 price of $15.99. That's would love to find one brand new for $15.99, right? I mean, we're finding them used for like $2,200 still on eBay, but it's starting to come down because the 50 series prices are finally starting to come out of the stratosphere and be more of a reasonable thing, closer to the MSRP, as if $2,000 for a GPU is considered reasonable. You guys need to be the judge and figure out what the best card is for you, but the generational uplift is listed here. That your scores, the raw scores at least, are right here. And looking at a 15% increase to go to a 4090, and then a 12% increase to go to a 5090, it's not a great increase, but it's enough to notice it, because I didn't think that was going to be worth even noticing. Like, why would anybody buy the 5090 over the 4090? And I can tell a difference. Right now we're recording and working on the 4090. I'm ready to put the 5090 back in. Scrubbing around and moving around in Davinci Resolve 4K video. I'm doing standard 4K stuff. I mean, it's not real heavy like a professional person that's getting paid to work with Davinci Resolve and Fusion, all these high-end techniques. I'm still working on my skill set, but even with the files that I'm using and testing with and showing you the rendering times, there is a noticeable difference scrubbing around with a 4090 versus the 5090. I'd even go as far as to say the 5070 Ti would do better at times than the 4090. I know I can't believe that that's the case, but there is something in these 50 series cards that really helps with the encoders. I mean, they've really bolstered that piece of it. And so from a productivity standpoint, the 50 series cards are pretty stout. Stay in the higher end of the line. I haven't really done any testing of the 5060, the 5050. I don't have my hands on any of those cards. All of these cards are coming out of my pocket. So I'm trying to pull them in as I get them and get reasonable need to bring them to the channel. But you guys let me know what you'd like me to test next. If there's something here that you really would like to see tested, then I haven't been doing it, please reach out, let me know. But I really enjoyed seeing this 80 to 90 class review, how they stacked up, how that 4090 and 5080 was flip-flopping between the synthetic and the productivity benchmarks. I found that fascinating, and it really helps you understand, based on what you're going to do with your GPU, gaming, synthetic benchmarks versus productivity, there is a difference in what you would buy them for. And so, get the best card you can for your budget. But I think that, there's something there to at least think about. But with that, I hope you found these videos thus far entertaining and informative. And with that, stay safe. God bless.